Mark, we can now report that a local business owner, who was one of the people who called the police, said the incident in Southport was like a scene from a horror movie. That from an eyewitness on the scene. The local business owner, one of the people who called the police to this incident, said it was like a scene from a horror movie.
I think many people at home will be experiencing it in the same way as we are in the studio. I feel like my sort of stomach is in my throat at the thought of these children potentially being victims of knife crime in this way.
It's always all the more disturbing when you realise that the target of an attack are the most vulnerable in society, the very young and the very old. When they get caught up in events, it has a particular resonance, and understandably so. And so, of course, it is all the more shocking to learn, as you say, we can surmise that children have been caught up in this. One, the reports early on about this being either some kind of nursery or daycare centre, and now, of course, through the ambulance service with the confirmation that one of the hospitals involved in receiving casualties is the Alderhay Children's Hospital. They ordinarily would not take adult patients.
Thank you, Mark. So Mark will be staying with us to bring you more on this story as it unfolds. But joining us now is the founder of Fair Cop, Harry Miller.
Harry, good to hear you this afternoon, and sorry it's in such appalling circumstances. Obviously, there has been a wide array of responses from the ambulance services. We know 13 ambulances were sent to the scene, but we also know that armed police were sent to respond. What does that tell us?
This tells us, quite frankly, that the situation is incredibly dangerous. As you know, that the second that there are weapons involved, the second there are knives involved, children involved, public involved, this number of ambulances, we have a catastrophic situation. Now, at the moment, of course, we don't know either the motive or the identity of the perpetrator. So I don't like to comment on that. But what we can say is that let's give a shout out to the police at this time. Yet again, they are being asked to march into a situation largely our police do not carry weapons other than perhaps a taser and a stick. And yet again, we are asking them to march into a cauldron, a boiling, seething, dangerous cauldron of a situation in order to protect the public and to protect the other emergency services who, of course, have been called onto the scene. This is an intolerable situation, and my thoughts go out, of course, to those who were stabbed.
Harry, we're just going to pause you for a second to turn to Mark White in the studio, who has some news.
This is a statement just through from Alderhay Children's Hospital. It has confirmed and declared a major incident. The Trust, it says, is working with other emergency services to respond to this incident, and our emergency department is currently extremely busy. They said in a statement, they've said, we ask patients, or parents I should say, to only bring their children to the emergency department if it's urgent. All other appointments and services are running as normal. So they have declared a major incident at Alderhay Children's Hospital. They are extremely busy, so an indication that we're dealing with multiple children that are involved in this, not just one or two, by what this hospital is saying.
And we now have reports that it may be 6 or 7 young girls who have been injured in this attack.
Right. Sorry, where have we gone?
Well, let's have a look at this. A local business owner. This is the same local business owner who initially phoned in the incident to the police. One of the people that phoned that in. This is just his speculation, but he says he believes 6 or 7 young girls involved in the stabbing. Of course, we do know from the official reports from the ambulance service that 8 individuals have been taken to hospital, 3 separate hospitals: Alderhay Children's Hospital, Aintree University Hospital and Southport and Formby Hospital. Mark, your statement from Alderhay Children's Hospital suggesting that they are under a lot of pressure, a very, very busy scene at that hospital.
Yes. I mean, obviously that local businessman who's been speaking to the media, that's fine, that's what he's saying. As you pointed out quite rightly, we've not had that officially confirmed, but certainly by what Alderhay Children's Hospital are saying now, they are dealing with multiple child casualties, to now have to resort to declaring a major incident at the hospital itself. And it's just worth reiterating the statement. The Trust, it says, is working with other emergency services to respond to this incident, and our emergency department is currently extremely busy. We ask that parents only bring their children to the emergency department if it's urgent. All other appointments and services are running as normal. So it's only the emergency department, the trauma unit, that's dealing with this crisis that is extremely busy. And
you use the word crisis, Mark. I suppose that is the only word we can use to describe it, because ultimately they wouldn't put a statement out like that if these were minor injuries. These are clearly major injuries.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how serious they are, but I mean, to tie up a trauma unit there with multiple staff, for them having to declare a critical incident at the hospital, it's clear that the injuries they're dealing with are quite complex in nature.
Well, Mark, thank you for that breaking line, and apologies to Harry Miller, the founder of Fair Cop, for interrupting you there with that news. But Harry, to return to you, this does seem like it is a significantly major event, of course. We now know that this children's hospital has said, frankly, it's responding to an overwhelming incident.
It is an overwhelming incident, a major incident. We do not historically have this kind of event on the streets of Britain. What I am terribly afraid of is that this is going to be dismissed as another lone wolf mental health episode. We cannot keep having these lone wolf isolated mental health episodes where people end up stabbed, dead, etc. It's less than a fortnight since a so-called mental health issue ended up with a lieutenant colonel being stabbed multiple times on the streets of the UK. Now it's happening here in Southport. We've got to do something about this. If it is a mental health issue, then we need to address our mental health services immediately. My suspicion, though, is that it's not a mental health issue. My suspicion is that it's something far more ideological.
Of course, we have no official confirmation on the identity of the suspect. It is interesting, however, that an arrest was made, and even though there were armed response units called to this incident, it seems like that the suspect, who has injured at least 8 people, according to the ambulance service, it seemingly was arrested alive. Oh, let's see if we can get Harry Miller back there. Apologies for the brief delay in communications there. Harry Miller, I hope you heard my question that it is significant that the suspect here was arrested alive.
Yeah, of course, and that's unique to Britain. In the United States, for instance, the perpetrator would have been shot and killed. That's it. We don't want to go down an American route. We don't want that. We don't want to have police officers routinely armed, as far as I'm concerned. But what we do want is to have police officers and members of the public to be protected. We have to address the mental health crisis if it turns out to be yet another mental health crisis. If it turns out to be an ideological incident, then we absolutely have to address that as well. Either way, what has happened today on the streets of Southport is entirely unacceptable. And it's the first duty of government to protect us from such incidents. And the government needs to crack on with this immediately. We need to be hearing from Yvette Cooper. We need to be hearing from Sir Keir Starmer. We need to be hearing from chiefs of police to say what they are going to do in order to drive this dangerous nonsense from our streets. We cannot have a situation where our children are put in a daycare centre or what have you, and they are subject to this. We simply cannot have it. If it needs more stop and searches to get weapons off the streets, let's have more stop and searches. If it needs arrests because people are engaging in terrorism, let's have more arrests. But what we need to do is to be proactive in order to keep our streets safe. This is simply not good enough.
Context, particularly referencing some of the recent stabbings that we've seen in this country. You mentioned the Lieutenant Colonel who was stabbed in a mental health incident. Of course, the Nottingham attacks we saw was put down to mental health as well. But it's fair to say we have also had our own experience of terror stabbings as well in this country. I mean, a long list of them. We have no confirmation that this is either of those things right now, but it seems like we can whittle down perhaps some of the other initial suspected elements of this. It's unlikely, if there are indeed children involved, that this is, for example, gang-related warfare.
No, I don't think it's gang-related warfare at all. I think it's going to be mental health or it's going to be terror-related. That's all I can think of right now. Either way, what we have is remove the means by which somebody with a mental health episode has the opportunity to wreak this kind of carnage. So that involves getting knives off our streets. We have to do that. We have to do that as a matter of urgency. And as I say, if it is ideologically driven, then that prompts and demands an entirely different response. We have to address the issue. You cannot solve the problem if you can't name it, and you can't solve it unless you resource it and give the police the powers to proactively go in there and do something about it. We cannot have people on our streets subject to this kind of terror, be it mental health or be it ideological. Either way, it's unacceptable.
But of course, Harry, as you say, irrespective of the motivation behind this, and we'll see as this unfolds what the motivation might have been. Irrespective of the motivation, this is an intolerable situation, as you've just described there. So what would you have the authorities do? You say Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper must come out and make a statement about this. But what would you have them do to deal with this completely intolerable situation? Because, as you say, we never used to see incidents like this on the streets of Britain.
There seems to be an increasing acceptance of weaponry on our streets. 20 years ago, there were very few police officers who were armed with anything other than a short truncheon. That's because back in the day, burglars, criminals, the criminal classes, they tended to respect the fact that our police service were unarmed. That's the way it went. But that has changed. Now, what I don't want to see happen is that we fundamentally change our police service so that we become a armed gendarmerie. We don't want that. But what we do want, we want a society that is not riddled with weaponry. Now, luckily in this country, unlike the United States, there isn't a massive gun culture, but there is an increasing knife culture. We have to start deploying officers and encouraging officers to use their powers of stop and search. We've got to give officers the opportunity to make stop and searches without instantly being accused of being racist or what have you. They need to use their common sense, because the primary objective is to get these dangerous weapons off the streets. And unfortunately, that means that there's going to be a few more people who are upset because they've had their pockets gone through, they've had their card looked at, they've had their jacket inspected, because they may well be carrying weapons. We have to do that, because the alternative is that we see more incidents like this. We have to get the weapons off the street. To do that, we have to have trust in our police service and give them the power, encourage them to use the powers that they already have to stop and search.
Well, Harry Miller, founder of Fair Cop, thank you so much for talking us through what is a developing incident. Still learning more information on this all the time. Appreciate your thoughts there.